Transform yourself in 2023. Learn how you can improve your physical health, your mental health, and do it one step at a time. Just watch this video and register for our webinar recording.
In health, everyone is the same. Health and well-being is influenced by what makes us human.
We all have emotions like hope, fear, love, ambition and jealousy, all of which influence health. In health, we are all different. Our health and well-being is influenced by our individual situation.
We have different ages, genders, DNA profiles, cultures, and socio-economic circumstances. Routines can be good for health. They can provide stability, certainty and lead to good practices.
Routines can be bad for health. We can develop bad habits and become boring and predictable. Spontaneity can be good for health, leading to personal development, motivation and new routines.
Spontaneity can be bad for our health. Uncertainty can lead to fear of the future and bad habits.
Hello, thank you very much for joining me today. My name's David Wortley, and what I hope will be a useful session is passing on some tips that have helped me to manage my own personal health. And I'm delighted to be able to welcome into the studio a friend of mine, Professor Ron O'Donnell. So I'm going to ask Ron to introduce himself. He's speaking from Arizona State University. Ron, would you like to say a few words about your background?
Thank you, David. I'm Ron O'Donnell, a clinical psychologist and clinical professor at Arizona State University in the College of Health Solutions. I'm the founding director of a doctoral degree program called Doctor of Behavioral Health, and our focus is creating a new workforce of clinicians and managers emphasizing integrated healthcare, meaning bringing together in a single place, primary care, family practice, experts in behavior change who can address both chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, education, medication management, lifestyle change, nutrition, physical activity, stress management, and of course, addressing the very common comorbid psychiatric and substance use disorders that our patients experience. I also emphasize global health. I'm doing research and consulting on this topic in China, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for that, Ron. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. We've got a really packed program, so there's a lot to get through today. So I'm going to start straight away by loading up a presentation onto the screen. And I'm going to use this presentation as a kind of basic. It really is a warts and all journey through my experiences of managing my own personal health over the last 9 years. And it's just a little disclaimer about the beginning, because I don't want you to think that what I'm about to tell you is prescriptive and it's based on detailed clinical research that I've undertaken. A lot of the ideas are taken from lifestyle medicine. And if you want to know about professional practices all around the globe, the best place to go to is the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine website, which I've shown on the screen there. So that is my disclaimer. But I hope that my experiences will be useful when you're looking at managing your own personal health. So the context behind all of this is that we're really facing some serious challenges as a result of the aging society. The picture that I show on the screen there is my mother when she was in a local hospital after being taken in as an emergency. And the principal problem with her was a total lack of hydration. And in fact, she came very close to dying. But the problem is that as we age, we need more medical care, and there are fewer and fewer working people to cover the costs of that care. And unlike when I was growing up, a lot of the care was responsibility of the family. It's now shifted as a result of demographic changes to responsibility of care homes. And so elderly care is in the UK, certainly a poor relation to public health services. And what's made it really brought to the circus, made a focus on it, is coronavirus. And I know Ron's going to share a few things about that. So the aging society challenges that we see, needing more healthcare as we get older. And so there are fewer and fewer working people able to support those costs. So what do we do about it? Well, we need, as a society, and this is an observation made by the boss of the NHS Health Services, Sir Simon Stevens, a few years ago, actually, making the point that, in particular with obesity, this is something which is essentially like a cliff face that we're in danger of dropping off. So we need to transition from cure to prevention, and we need to make some behavioral changes in our lifestyles. And that is really how I started, not particularly because I had any health problems, but more to do with the fact that I wanted to see if I could make some positive difference to my health and my lifestyle. So these are some of the key health and well-being influences that we're going to cover today, and I'm going to talk about my experiences and give some hints and tips that I hope will be useful to anyone watching this, either this live presentation or recording. So we're covering exercise, diet, relationships, sleep, alcohol and harmful substances, stress management, hydration, and digital health and wearable technologies. So the steps involving effectively behavior change, and these are the steps essentially that I took, where you need to be able to measure those key influences that affect your health. There is a saying that if you can't measure something, you can't change it something. And because we're all individual, once you're able to measure these key influences, we need to have our own personal benchmarks, which are based on our individual circumstances. And those circumstances will help us to set goals, which are partly challenging, but also are realistic and achievable. We need to build a supporting environment, and I believe that we should provide supporting digital therapies, and I'm going to talk about that towards the end of my presentation. And finally, it's all about encouraging personal responsibility and control and management over our own health. So in my case, I can show you what it did for me over a period of time. I started off it's some 16 years ago, 14, 16 years ago. This is what I looked like then in 1998. And I was still obese in 2008. But in 2013, for a variety of reasons, nothing to do really with my health, but more to do with people telling me that I was fat and that they were worried about me. But a combination of circumstances in May 2013 led me to see if I could improve my physical and mental health. And within 3 to 4 months, I'd actually lost 21 kilos. And I'm going to explain to you how I achieved that and the lessons that I learned from that. So the first part of this session is about exercise. I'll just play a little bit. So that was 3 different types of exercise that I actually do myself. And the thing that made the biggest difference to me in the beginning was walking. And so we're talking about in 2013, 9 years ago, 10,000 steps a day was the mantra. And so I decided to build into my daily routine a 5-mile walk every day. And I was able to do that by starting my walk fairly early in the morning. So I got most of it out of the way during the day. And of course, this isn't always possible for everybody, but there'll be some hints and tips on whatever your circumstances, you can build some exercise into your daily routine. There's lots of different ways of doing it. In my case, it was all about walking. Ideally in the countryside or in beautiful scenery, which is where I'm fortunate to be able to do. I live in the countryside, so I walk every morning. But even in living in the town, and when I travel abroad, I always try to go for a walk every day to cover the majority of my 10,000 steps. Of course, there are other ways of exercising. You've got Peloton or these exercise bikes. I'm going to show you some examples of things that you can do to help that kind of exercise to be more enjoyable. You don't need to spend a huge amount of money, but you can also include gardening, and any form of physical activity will help you in managing your personal health. I'm going to bring Ron in at this point because I know Ron is an exercise, a bit of an exercise guru. So how did you get your exercise? What was your background to doing exercise, Ron?
I'll begin by saying I love the title of your talk today, Healthy Aging and Resolutions. And in my case, I've been a long time health advocate, meaning I eat a relatively healthy diet. I'm an endurance athlete, so I've been exercising for decades now with running, swimming, cycling, doing weights for strength and endurance. But in spite of that, I turned 65 last year, and in the past year, I had diagnosed with hypertension. I began taking lipid medication a few months ago. So I'm facing the challenges we all face with aging, and some things, in spite of our best efforts, need to be addressed. And resolutions, of course, we know from the science that making resolutions at New Year typically are not effective. And I'm focused on the emerging science of habit change. How do we change our habits in a way that are relatively easier for our patients? I would add, for example, I started using recently the app called Noom, Noom. I'm not in any way associated with them, but it's a good app in terms of counting your calories, having a formula to look for a zone for weight loss. Excellent, but it requires several times a day I'm logging on my meals. Even though it's the best-in-class app for doing that, it makes it very easy. It's a challenge. I'm a health psychologist. I have to make sure I make time to do this. How are our colleagues who are not professionals, who are just everyday blokes trying to make a living, who are stressed out with their families and work, going to make time for these kind of things? We need to find new ways of doing that. And I recommend for the audience, for introduction to habit change science, to pick up the book Atomic Habits by the author James Clear. It's a great introduction to this topic of how do we find ways to make habit change easier. It's still very difficult, right? But how to make it easier through science and technology and other kind of assistance is very helpful. And of course, last thing I'll say, David, given your interest and focus, digital health technology is critical for all of this. I use a smartphone app for meditation, for I mentioned my exercise tracking, for my nutrition tracking. I have Bluetooth-enabled apps so I can manage my blood pressure cuff through Bluetooth, my weight scale through Bluetooth. So health technology is critical, and that's a challenge we're facing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Ron, both Ron and myself are really cast in the same mold, and I do pretty much the same kind of things, but I'm not an elite athlete as or even in the same category as Ron when it comes to exercise. Of course, the challenges for most people is that if you don't have that background, you don't have that interest, it's not that easy to build it into your life. So here's a few tips that I can give for exercise. Try and build a routine into your day, and try and do something different every day. In my case, I was helped by using basically what amounted to a step tracker. And so I had a mobile application that recorded my steps, but it also recorded my sleep, and it also allowed me to enter in what I was eating, so I could measure the calories that I was consuming. So digital health technologies and wearable technologies like smartwatches and trackers, devices like Fitbits, which I use, and some of the other devices are very useful because they can actually give you some kind of motivation. So try to walk or cycle instead of using your car, or use the stairs whenever you can. And sometimes it's helpful to leave things in places where you have to go and fetch them by walking up the stairs or walking some distance. You can get off at an earlier bus or a tube stop. but set yourself targets that are realistic. And what I recommend, if you're looking at wearable technologies and smartwatches, is that when you get one, don't immediately start doing 10,000 steps. Just use your normal behavior for a few weeks to see how many steps you normally do in a day, and then set yourself targets to improve on that on a daily basis. And those targets should be a little bit challenging, but they should also be achievable. And of course, if you want to also look at your physical and mental health, you can join exercise and social events. I'm just going to play you another little video, which is of the use of virtual reality for exercise, and a little kind of exercise bike, which is relatively affordable, that allows you to do journeys through different parts of the world. So I'm just going to play this little video for you. It's an application called VZ Fit, and it uses virtual reality. Now, the boundary of my operation. So at this point, I'm going to start recording a video which will be stored on the Oculus Quest headset. And now I can pedal and exercise. And the visual imagery from Yosemite Park is actually taken from Google Street View. And it's one of the many rides that users have set up. And these are existing users who form part of a community creating virtual rides from all around the world. It's a relatively straightforward process to set up your own rides, but there are some hints and tips which I can go into. So that's just a little short video clip of this application called VZ Fit. And the point about that video is that I was using a little desktop device and I was pedaling with my hands. So you can put that little bike on the floor as well and pedal with your feet. So whatever circumstances suit you. And what I did was to just attach a couple of sensors to the pedals, and so I could use it to have this virtual reality experience. But you don't have to have a virtual reality headset. This kind of technology is available to use on your normal television set, and there's lots of applications that work with a smartphone, so that you can set up your own exercise routines and use a really quite an affordable exercise bike like the one that I just showed in that video clip. I now want to move on to diet and nutrition. Now, one of the key things that I learned about diet and nutrition is that when it comes to losing weight, although exercise is important, and 10,000 steps did it for me, it is actually diet and nutrition that are critical to weight loss, but also critical to other things. And one of the experiences that I had very early on, when I was monitoring the calories that I was taking in and burning, I was reading information about cutting down on calories or having a low carb diet, and what I found was that although I lost all of this weight, I found that my muscles had gone flabby, and so I realized that I wasn't getting enough protein in my diet. So nutrition is something that is best. The advice on nutrition is best left to the expert. So you can read up about it, but it is not just about cutting down the calories or cutting down on the carbs. Ron, I'm going to bring you back in again now. Have you got any tips or advice on diet and nutrition?
I'll share what I've been doing in my own life, and I mentioned habit science. Some of the things you mentioned are in line with habit science. Think about how we form our current habits. Over time, we repeat the same behavior the same time every day. It becomes unconscious. You wake up, maybe you brush your teeth, wash your face, prepare a cup of tea or coffee. these things become automatic, routine parts of your day. So the challenge is, how do we introduce a new behavior? Having a banana for lunch, right? Having some fresh vegetables for a snack rather than candy, carbo food. The answer is habit science. And one example is habit stacking. Identify an existing habit you do every day. Every day, for example, I have a cup of coffee. When I start meditating also, I will say, after I finish my cup of coffee, I'll meditate for a short time, 5 minutes. Make it small and easy so it's achievable. And do it at the same time every day. And over time, it becomes a new habit. I have my coffee, I meditate. I don't even think about it. Do I have to meditate now? It becomes part of my lifestyle. That's called habit stacking. There's a whole science emerging of this that's very effective for adding new healthy habits. A little more difficult for stopping bad habits. I can't go into that in the time we have available today. But again, that book I mentioned, Atomic Habits, and many other publications now, habit stacking, are focused on this new technique that I think is going to revolutionize behavior change. It's much more understandable for the layperson. And it can be easily incorporated into digital health. We have many apps now using this habit science technology combination to address habit change. So for me, that's how I've been adding new foods, healthier foods to my diet, and making them routine, part of my everyday schedule.
Well, that was absolutely perfect, Ron, because you've given the name to what I do. I do habit stacking, and because one of the things I've not been very good at in my life is hydration. I don't drink really enough water. So I've been using habit stacking. And so what happens when I have my morning coffee or when I have my afternoon coffee, I drink a glass of water. And before I start my lunch, I drink a glass of water. And when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, when I go down to the kitchen, is to have 2 glasses of water. So in that way, I've already accumulated 6 glasses of water out of the recommended 8. And this habit stacking really does work. But of course, habit stacking is great if you can incorporate eating good, nutritious food at a particular time and a particular location. But of course, there are temptations. It's very easy to fall into unhealthy routines. And I'll just show you a couple of temptations which I'm guilty of falling into, and these are challenges for me. And the first thing is, when I go for my walk every morning, I go to this burger bar. You can see it's on the main road, so it happens to be just over 2 miles from my house. So that's almost half of my 10,000 steps. And if I'm good, I'll just have a drink of coffee there. But it's so tempting when I smell the food that I have to have a bacon and egg bap or a sausage bap or something that's bad for me. And once I get into that habit, it's very difficult to get out of it. But as you say, if you build into a routine, as it becomes expected, you have a cup of coffee, you go there, he makes you a cup of coffee, he knows that's what you want. The other reason I'm showing the garage is not something that I fall into, a trap that I fall into these days. But what used to happen, whenever I filled my car with petrol, I go into the shop and I buy a bar of chocolate. And this was a habit that became ingrained. Buying petrol and a bar of chocolate became part of the same routine. And it took me a while to get out of that. But once you develop these healthy habits, so they become part of your routine, it is pretty easy then to incorporate into your daily routine. Thank you very much anyway for those people who are typing comments. It's very, very useful. But there are also diet technologies, and this shows you some screenshots from my Fitbit. And there are a lot of different wearable devices that have mobile applications which give you diet recommendations. So this, you can see, this is actual data from my Fitbit screen, and it shows me what the food that I've recorded. And in the middle screen, you can see what I've been eating for lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner, and it calculates my calories. It tells you how it calculates your calorie target, and it will also give you some hints and tips about special diets. Of course, these are always not available for everybody. It's not easy for everyone to get that kind of food. So it's a question of doing whatever it is suits your circumstances for every individual. So these are the tips that I have for diet and nutrition. And what we are like to see in the future are personalized diet and nutrition based on your DNA, on your epigenetics and medication. Artificial intelligence and machine learning will come into play, so that when you actually buy food, it will calculate the nutritional value and give you advice on the food. And I can see opportunities in future for personalized food delivery services for both ingredients and pre-cooked meals. And increasing what we're seeing with digital health is feedback linked to biometric data collected from wearables. And you can see when we go on to talk about alcohol, I get the information from my smartwatch that tells me what effect my alcohol is having on my body. So diet tips: try to include fruit and vegetables. When temptation calls, this is habit stacking in a way. I drink a glass of water rather than have that bar of candy. Try to avoid these unhealthy routine triggers, as Ron mentioned. You can join groups like Weight Watchers, so and that also has benefits from a mental health point of view when you're working with people who are in similar circumstances to yourself. Set yourself diet challenge with a reward at the end, and this is how I started. When I was away on holiday, I would set myself a diet challenge, eat a Mediterranean diet during the week. Very good. And then I'd make sure that on a Saturday evening, I'd have a glass of wine and a nice meal. So in that way, I would ensuring that I got good nutrition, but it wasn't something that really affected my health that badly. So moving on to relationships. Those are a couple of dolls that I bought when I was in Budapest with my partner. And I just say a few words about relationships without giving too many secrets away, is that when I first started on this healthy living routine, I was living on my own. And for a couple of years, it was very easy for me to control and manage what I did every day. I had a complete choice of what I ate, when I walked, etc. As soon as you get involved in a relationship, you have someone else to think about. In the case of my partner, like me, she liked a glass of wine. She likes good food, but she had a different lifestyle habit. She preferred to have a large meal in the evening. And so when you're thinking about relationships, you just bear in mind that relationships can be a very positive, have a very positive impact on your physical and mental health. So all the good things with that I enjoyed with my partner, doing things together, did a great deal for my physical and mental health. And she was quite happy to accept my morning walk as part of my daily routine. And of course, if you can join in exercise with other people as well, it gives a great benefit. So, but it's not always easy. But the thing to do is to be able to communicate about this with your partner, and try and do things together. Of course, a lot of people today, as we know, are separated by distance. Families move away. We're living into a very mobile society. And of course, there are technologies today like Facebook Portal, as I showed there, WhatsApp, Zoom, and other technologies which can help you keep in touch. And that's an important part, I think, particularly of mental health. I'm just showing some more comments now. My friend Kane Kim, he's based in Korea. I was lucky enough to meet him a few weeks ago when I was over at a conference. But Kane is endorsing this idea of walking to the office and how it benefits his. And also another tip from Taruna Chon. She adds a lemon and berry to my water to make it more interesting. Yeah, that's a very good tip. And in fact, when I mentioned that when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I have 2 glasses of water. The second thing I do is to boil the kettle and have honey and lemon. So I have a glass of honey and lemon. Which also I think helps with my immune system. So some relation tips: do things together with people you care for. Try and join groups with a common interest if you can. And of course, all of these depend on your personal circumstances. Volunteering for community activities works very well for older people. If you are walking, try and use it to visit new places or walk different routes. Communicate and share your feelings. And if you can't be physically with the people that you care for, think about what technologies are available to be able to connect to distant friends and family. So now moving on to sleep. And I'll show you just a little video clip. This is not recommended as a habit, but it's one that I fall into. Yes, that is not recommended as a good habit, but it's one that I fall into, and I've fallen into a routine of in the evenings, I get into the chair and watch television, and all too often I fall asleep. And this affects my quality of my sleep when I do go to bed. So it's something to be very wary of. In fact, funnily enough, when I lived on my own, I very rarely watched television. I was mostly doing things, only going to drama group, walking outside, doing different things. And my partner, Jackie, she sometimes sits and watch television, but a lot of the time she will get up and she will do things. She will go on her computer, she will do some housework and various activities. And that's the kind of thing really that I should do. But sleep is very important to our health. I use a smartwatch to monitor my health and my sleep rather, but it not only monitors how long I'm sleeping, but it monitors the quality of my sleep. And I must admit that I could do better. And here's an example of sleep tracking technologies that I use. The first 2 screens on the left-hand side, they show the sleep tracking in Fitbit. And typically, I will get a sleep score of in between around about 75 for most times, and I'm sleeping. My sleep duration is around about 6 hours, even though I'm in bed for maybe 8 or more hours. So it breaks down my sleep into the time that I'm asleep. It breaks it down to deep and rapid eye movement, and it shows how my body is recovering. That's what we call restoration, and it will give me some tips and advice on how to improve on that. I have another smartwatch which I got from China that shows sleep in a different way, and it shows the pattern of my sleep, and it gives some advice. But there are just some generic bits of advice for sleep tips that I found to be quite effective. Keeping your bedroom as dark as possible. So in other words, not having a lot of ambient light in the room. If you can keep your bedroom dark, try and establish a routine bedtime, because your body will develop its own clock routine. It will have its own routine, but that's partly a result of your DNA and other factors. But if you can establish a routine bedtime, for me, it's around about 10:30, and my alarm goes off at 7 o'clock during the week and 7:30 at the weekends. It's helpful also to leave at least 3 hours after your last meal. This is what I found. Hydration is very good for sleep, and in my case, I'm not do as I say rather than do as I do. Try to do something other than watch TV in the evenings, and avoid sleeping in the day. Apart from little short naps, they're okay. And also, what helps is trying stretching exercises before bedtime. So I'm going to bring Ron in again now. And Ron, have you got any sleep tips that you use yourself?
You did cover all the key points for sleep. I do want to back up and talk about relationships. That's really critical. I think when you're endeavoring to make a lifestyle change, lose weight, exercise more, making a public announcement to your partner, your spouse, your coworkers, your friends, and getting their support seems critical for success. I mean, all these apps and technologies are great, but having a human being cheer you on, motivate you, dress you and help you when you're sliding and backslipping, those are critical. And I'll add on top of that, we're living in a time of extreme stress. We know with between COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, the supply chain disruptions, we're seeing increases globally again in depression, anxiety, anger, right, frustration. We're seeing social media, people using their social media platforms, often having that incite anger and attacks on each other. So we have many things happening in our environment that are causing us to feel worse. Now, I do want to mention, I did a great read recently, a book called Blind Spot, The Global Rise of Unhappiness and How Leaders Missed It by John Clifton. It's a book by the Gallup polling. They've been polling globally, and they find unhappiness has been rising globally for about 10 years now. So it isn't just COVID, but there are many factors, whether it's inequities in terms of our systems of wealth, whether it's now the current things of COVID, wars. We're all more on edge, more easily angered. And again, being aware of that, addressing how you use social media, and back to relationships, talking to your partner, your spouse, your friends, finding support, sharing your frustrations, finding ways to cope are critical. So relationships are key. And then using health technologies to address depression, anxiety, anger. There are plenty of apps and technologies out there for doing that. Digital health can really expand our reach to people who can't afford or have the access to going to a therapist office. So I want to just kind of take a riff on that relationship issue, David, and emphasize how important that is, both as a source of support and continued help as you try and struggle with behavior change throughout your life, and to recognize we're in a world now where stress is maybe highest it's been in decades, and maybe in our generation. And we must be aware and find ways to cope with that successfully.
Yeah, some very good points there, Ron. We're going to go on to stress management and look at that in a bit more detail and look at some of the solutions that are available for us today. I'm going to move on now to alcohol and play a little video clip. This is me with a can of Guinness. And me with a glass of wine. So you saw me with a can of Guinness, me with a glass of wine. Now I do like both of those, but on a daily basis, I don't take alcohol. So what I've learned to do as a practice is to only drink alcohol on social occasions when we have friends around, and these are really quite infrequent, and that's my way of managing alcohol. What I found from my wearable technologies is there's a really almost instant and direct relationship between alcohol and my resting pulse rate. I can guarantee that if I have a glass of wine or a glass of beer, the next day my resting pulse rate will have gone up a couple of points. Now, I'm not suggesting that is necessarily a bad thing, but it does illustrate how different substances, alcohol, smoking, do have a really quite not almost instant, but quite an important effect on our body, and these can be both positive and negative. But in my case, I do know, I am aware of the fact that if I have a glass of wine, for example, it doesn't usually stop with one glass. It usually finishes up with 4 or 5 glasses because I'm in the habit of drinking wine as if it were a glass of water. In the same way, I don't savor the experience. I did find that wine had a bigger effect on my resting pulse rate than, for example, Guinness. Guinness was probably the one drink that affected my sleep and my resting pulse rate less than any other forms of alcohol. So here's a few tips that I've learned to apply for myself. Avoid drinking alone. Recognize your triggers and behaviors. Just recognize what it is that triggers you to have a glass of wine or a bit of alcohol, and think about having some kind of substitute so the trigger triggers something else. You can track the effects of alcohol and other forms of wine on different aspects of your health, and I think it's also helpful to drink water before and after you have alcohol. So now moving on to stress management, which Ron's just alluded to. I'll just show you this short video. That's just an illustration of how one technology, virtual reality, is playing quite an important role in stress management because it can take you to relaxing environments. And this has been used commercially. There's been a lot of clinical research on the impact of therapeutic virtual reality environments. I would just like to show you another video of a VR meditation environment called Trip.
Today's reflection will guide you toward bringing your awareness to the present moment. Breathe with me. Connect with your breath, slowly breathing in and out. When you feel relaxed, look into the light, and we'll let the next phase of our journey begin. As you float through this space, feel the tension leaving your body.
Now, with stress management, of course, having a virtual reality headset does allow you to be more immersed in and can help with relaxation and meditation. But there's a whole range of mobile applications, so you don't necessarily have to pay a great deal of money to be able to take advantage of this. Ron, would you like to share some of your experiences of the kind of technologies that support meditation?
Sure. My go-to approach for stress has been for years now mindful meditation. There are many forms of meditation. They're all very helpful, but the one that's you can do a search, mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's a specific protocol, typically 8 sessions. You could do with a leader or on your own using help. There are many apps for mindfulness now, but the idea is it isn't simply relaxing your body. That's part of it. The breathing, the visual imagery you used in your example. It also is a way to begin to be in the moment and to recognize without reacting to negative thoughts, emotions you have. Oftentimes we feel angry, depressed. We aren't even conscious of it. And our reaction is, well, I feel bad. I need to relieve that feeling. So I'm going to reach for a drink of alcohol. I'm going to pick a cigarette out and have a smoke. I'll feel better. And that's true. Those approaches are effective, but they become habits over time again. How do you break those habits? You have to really learn to identify that cue, whether it's a fight with your spouse, a work deadline, a work you're writing for research that's overdue, and find out what your reaction is, identify your own cue cycle, and find some way to take your maladaptive response that gives you a reward. I smoke, I feel better, and replace it. So in my case, I might find, oh, I have a work deadline, I'm stressed out, I want to have a drink and relax. Maybe I'll try mindful meditation instead and see if I then have a same reward. I feel relaxed, better than alcohol would give me or a cigarette might give me. That's a really straightforward habit science technique we can use combined with mindful meditation. And again, many apps are out there to support using these kind of tools.
Okay, thanks for that, Ron. That's very, very helpful. I know there's quite a few mobile apps, and the app that I just showed you there, Trip, I think is also available on smartphones, and these use sounds and relaxing experiences. We had a comment from one of our delegates use it about mindful meditation, and if you can build this into your daily routines, I'm certain it's going to help. In my case, I get all of these thoughts and negative feelings when I do my walk in the morning. I process my thoughts. I'm more conscious of how I feel, and I can get a lot of negative emotions out of the way doing my morning walk. So moving on now, with stress management, it affects not just your mental health, but it also can affect your physical health. And here's the examples of stress management technologies. I showed you the video of the VR application called Trip. It also uses gamification as a way of helping you to develop better breathing routines. On the right-hand side, there's a range of different mobile applications that you can use that allow you to not only find techniques for relaxing, but also help you to track and manage and monitor your stress. So a few stress management tips. Walking in the countryside does it for me because I can appreciate the world around me, nature. It's also what I've found it's a trigger for serendipity. If you're walking, you see things which you wouldn't see in your car. And you meet people and you can have conversations that you might not have if you travel in your car. Developing a hobby, something you're passionate about, is also very therapeutic. Listening to calming music or sounds, as we heard with the Trip application. Exercise itself is very good for helping with stress management. Yoga and meditation, and even watching a feel-good films, particularly if you watch that with someone that's close to you and talk about it afterwards, can also help with stress. Moving on now to, I know this is also something that Ron is very interested in wearable technologies. That little video clip shows part of my daily routine, and this is part of my morning routine. I think something that Ron does as well, by the sounds of it. When I've had my 2 glasses of water and when I've had my glass of hot honey and lemon, I check out my sleep on my Fitbit device and also my other wearable device to see what kind of sleep I've had and whether it ties in with the way in which I'm feeling. But then I also, as a routine, take my blood pressure using the cuff that you saw in that video. It's an Omron device. You just simply put on your wrist You hold your arm up so that the device is level with your heart, and it will measure your blood pressure. And I find that is also a useful way of me keeping in tune with my body and understanding how my body works better, and identifying things that are perhaps damaging to my health. But the one thing about wearable technology and about smartwatches, I'm going to ask Ron for his thoughts on this, is that you shouldn't look at the data that you get from a wearable device as being the trigger as an absolute figure. In other words, you shouldn't look at your blood pressure and think, oh my God, I need to see the doctor. I think what's more important is to look at how these things change over a period of time. And when you notice that there are some changes, and you recognize that you actually feel these yourself in your body, and these are reflected in what you're seeing on your smartwatch, then that is the time, I think, to bring in health professionals. I'm going to bring in Ron again now, and Ron, what are your thoughts about wearables and how best that we use them?
I think they're incredible tools that they really support what we would call condition self-management. As we age, having multiple conditions is more and more common for all of us, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, obesity, whether it's stress, depression, anxiety. And apps are not a magic bullet, right? They're not going to solve these problems, but they're a tool we can use to help us become more self-aware and self-monitor our health over time and make adjustments with the app and other messaging technologies. So in my case, I do my mindfulness meditation every morning. I get a reminder to do that. I log on. Yes, I get a reward. You're on a streak, 5 days. That's very reinforcing. Enter my meals on my Noom app. I can make sure I see what my goal is and target that. And some days, you're right. There'll be days where you're higher than you want to be on blood pressure. And it's often you can put 2 plus 2 together and get 4. Oh, last night with my friend, I had a big plate of nachos or chicken wings and a couple of pints of beer. No surprise, I'm feeling a little more bloated today. I'm having a little bit higher blood pressure today. So it becomes a tool to recognize patterns in your life and address those and change those. So I find, just like you, David, I do my daily blood pressure. I do my apps for my fitness. I do my weight measurement every day on a scale. And it's not to obsess and become obsessed with numbers. It's really to have a tool so I can habitually keep track of where I am. When weight starts creeping up, it brings my attention. Oh, I should do something now to make sure I watch my nutrition, my exercise, or both to try and get back to my target goal. So it's a tool that you don't just do weight loss for a few weeks and you're done. It's a lifelong habit you must address throughout your life continuously and incorporate as part of managing your health over time. And technology is a great tool. All the things you mentioned, whether it's in my case, my Apple Watch, tied to my apps, tied to my Bluetooth devices, they're great tools. They're not magic bullets, they're great tools. And having someone human, a spouse, a friend, a counselor, a therapist to support you on that journey is also really another part of the equation on top of the digital health technologies.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I've got Bluetooth weigh scales as well, and I must admit, after Christmas, I became more and more reluctant to stand on them in the morning because I wasn't going to like what I was seeing, and in fact, I put on half a stone over the Christmas period. But what I found, by just changing a few little things, not having a biscuit with my coffee, going to the burger bar and just having a cup of coffee instead of a cup of coffee and a bacon bap. All of these things were effective within a short period of time. So they are very useful guides. But again, I don't think we should become too obsessed by them.
Well, David, your point about the weight scale is really a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Most of us gain weight during holiday period. That's not unusual. But if you don't weigh yourself, you can simply be unaware and continue with negative habits and have that weight increase. The weight scale, it can be upsetting, depressing, but it's also a signal, do something. And if you know, the self-monitoring by itself is facilitated with effective behavior change. So a great example, David.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Okay, so moving on to, we're getting close towards the end of the presentation now. So these are a number of devices that are available today. And in the 9 years that I've been doing all of this, I really have noticed how the technology has changed. I started off with a device called the Jawbone Up, which was essentially just a bracelet, really without a clock or any kind of display. It just showed me the number of steps that I was doing. And in fact, it's very similar to the device in the top right-hand corner of the screen there. But it gave me a good start. I think today what I've observed is that the smartwatches, the latest one that I got from China, is pretty much a medical grade device. It will measure heart rate variability. It will measure my blood glucose levels, a whole heart rate variability, ECG, whole range of things, which you would normally go to a doctor to get that kind of information. Now that, there are, and it's important processes for medical, clinical validation of these devices, classification as a medical device. But for a lot of people, if you use them in the right way, because they are coming down in price, the watch from China cost me $40, and it's given me really good high grade medical information. If you use it in the right way, it can help with managing your managing your health greatly. So there are some tips that I would give to anybody using smart devices. What I would say is they're better used for tracking progress. They're not designed to replace medical expertise. I know Ron has emphasized this himself. Human beings, we must not forget human beings, because these are critical to successful personal health management. Don't try and do everything at once. Just try one change at a time and see what effect that has on you and your body. Don't let these devices control your life, and customize your targets, whatever targets you have, to suit your lifestyle. So moving on to the final topic is hydration. I'll just show a little video. So this is me using drinking one of my 2 glasses of water in the morning in the kitchen, and as Ron said, it's a habit stacking. It's linking a habit to a routine that I have when I go down into the kitchen. So I mentioned the glasses of water, I mentioned the hot honey and lemon, but I also, and it's not medication, but I also have a multivitamin tablet. And I have a little carton of Actimel, which is supposed to support with your immune system. And that's really the limit of any medication of any kind that I take. So hydration, I think, is very important for sleep. It's for general health. There are technologies available to support hydration, and this shows an example of a bottle which has effectively the 8 glasses of water, and it links to a mobile app which will give you little nudges during the day to have another drink. So this is another way in which technology can help you by prompting you to carry out things that are good for your health at certain moments in your day. So my hydration tips are create routines that involve drinking water. Take bottled water with you when you go on trips out. Try and drink some water with your meals. If you can drink 8 glasses a day, the only thing to avoid, or that I avoid, is drinking a lot of water close to bedtime, because it ends up with me having to go to the toilet more often than I would want to. So now, as we come to the end of the presentation, I just want to reflect on healthy active aging technologies. They're good, as both Ron and myself have experienced, they're good for creating new lifestyle behavior habits. But these technologies must be plug and play. They can't be difficult to use, particularly for older people. And if you can combine these challenges with some fun, using gamification, this also helps you with compliance with these routines. Connect and engage with your family and community, get them involved in your journey. And the technologies will provide you with feedback and diagnostics that can help with both motivation and health tracking. And these technologies will give you a certain amount of control over your own health. So finally, about lifestyle medicine, if you'd like to know more about lifestyle medicine, I thoroughly recommend that you visit the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine website, where you can get a lot more detailed information about the principles of lifestyle medicine from the experts on the topic. Finally, before I close, I think one of the things we need to do is to change our perceptions. We need to think of older people as an asset. Far too often we think of them as a cost and a liability. But older people, Ron, as he mentioned, is 65, or maybe you're more than 65 now, Ron. I'm 73. So I'd like to think that I've still got a lot to offer the world. And there's a lot of people in my situation, I think, who would fall into the same sort of category. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to bring Ron back in again now. And thank him for his contribution. Would you like to make any any final remarks, Ron, before we end this broadcast?
No, just thanks for the opportunity to present with you, David, and thanks to those that I'm watching the chats from Dudley, Taruna, Kane. Thanks for your comments; they're all spot on. And last of all, I'm sure David will post my contact information with this on his website. Feel free to contact me by email. I'm happy to share more resources. I'm an educator, right? So if you want information about mindfulness, about habit change, I just scratched the surface today with these brief points I made. Happy to offer more detail. If you're interested, please contact me, and happy to follow up on that. Thanks again to all of you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ron. Ron is also on LinkedIn, so you can connect with Ron on LinkedIn. We have another comment from Taruna. And this is certainly, and I'm sure Ron, with that experience in Asia, this is something that is almost accepted in Asia, in China, and other countries. They see older people as having an ability to bring wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably a good note to close on. Thank everybody for joining us both today. So I'm now going to bring the session to a close. And say thanks once again. And if these tips have been useful for you, don't hesitate to get in touch with me or Ron. We'd be more than happy to help in any way we can. Thank you.